You don't need to be inauthentic to communicate effectively with executives. Instead, you need to learn something called results-focused language, which is just a fancy way of saying you need to know how to speak the language of leaders. In today's episode, I'm teaching you a beginner-friendly way to do this so you can captivate attention and achieve the reputation, the impact, and the upward mobility you desire. Let's dive in. Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am so excited about today's episode. If you are really wanting to up-level your leadership and you want to learn to communicate with executives in their language, and you want to be able to speak to really high-up executives as if you are a peer of theirs, and you want your voice and your words to be potent and powerful so that people really respect you as a leader, then this is the episode for you. Today, we're diving deep into one of my favorite topics, the topic of executive communication. And I'm going to be teaching you how to adjust the way that you communicate in order to better capture the attention of executives. Learning to truly capture the attention of a high-up leader is a really important tool that you will want to add to your toolkit, especially as you advance and elevate into higher leadership positions. You're going to need to do that both to attain higher leadership positions, but also so that once you're in those leadership positions, you know how to effectively communicate with higher level executives and stakeholders. And if you're thinking that that sounds hard or scary, or you're worried that maybe you have to be really fake or inauthentic in order to do that, my hope is that today's episode gets rid of those fears, because I'm going to teach you how to captivate the attention of a leader in a way where you don't have to be inauthentic or show up as someone different in any way, shape, or form. So today's episode is dense. We have a lot to cover, but I'm really excited. What I'm going to be doing in today's episode is first, I'm going to teach you the two ways that we get the attention of an executive. The second thing I'm going to touch on is I'm going to shatter a couple of misconceptions or myths that people have about how they need to communicate when it comes to being impressive and captivating to an executive stakeholder. And my hope is that this will free you to see that you can do this really well while still being true to yourself. And finally, I'm going to teach you a tool of mine called the toll booth method. The toll booth method is a simple communication tool that you can use to get better at speaking in a way that truly gets an executive audience to listen to you. Before I go any deeper, I just want to say hi and introduce myself if you're new to the show. And if you're not new to the show, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for being a loyal listener of the Art of Speaking Up podcast. And if you're newer to the show, I'm so happy you're here. I'm Jess, and I'm a coach for professional women. All of my work, including my podcast and my signature coaching program, the Art of Speaking Up Academy, all of that is designed to help women develop the unstoppable confidence and voice they need to elevate into a big leadership position in their careers. I was able to land my dream leadership role in my corporate career, and I was really able to attain that upward mobility that I so deeply wanted. But I struggled so much with mindset and with my self-confidence and with finding my voice along the way. And this podcast is really intended to be an honest look at the challenges that we often face as women. And more importantly, I want to give you the tools and the inner confidence you need to make your professional dreams come true. And of course, knowing how to speak to executives with power and polish and finesse is a really important part of that puzzle. So I am so excited to dive into it with you in today's episode. So first, I'm going to talk about the two different ways we get executives to listen to us, aka the two different ways we can get attention from executives. And by the way, the more attention that we can get from an executive audience, the more it typically benefits us professionally. When we get lots of face time with executives and we're really good at captivating their attention, typically that deepens their relationship with us. It deepens how much they trust us. It strengthens our reputation as a leader. And all of those things are variables that typically speed up your path to promotion. So it is so important to be really good at capturing the attention of an executive. Okay, so the two ways that we capture the attention of an executive is one, by getting time on their calendar, and two, by capturing their attention when we do have that time with them. The reason that I'm making this distinction is because it can be easy to assume if I have time with an executive, if I'm in a meeting with them, if I'm getting to share my work with them or walk them through what my team has been doing, I have their attention. They're in the room with me and I am talking to them. However, that's not exactly true. Executives and leaders, especially those very high up in an organization, they have a very cluttered, busy mind. So just because we're on their calendar and we have tangible time booked with them, that doesn't automatically entitle us to their attention. We have to earn their attention, even if we have already earned the time on their calendar. So it's almost like two hurdles that we have to leap over. First, we have to get the time on their calendar, which can be really difficult. I'm sure we've all had some experience of that. But then once we get that time, we can't take it for granted. And we can't assume just because I have this meeting or I get to share my work with them, they're going to be paying attention to me. We have the second hurdle of having to earn their attention. And the truth is, it's very common for an executive to drop into a meeting thinking to themselves, how much do I need to pay attention? Or how much do I want to pay attention? And how we know that this is true is because you've probably done this too. You've probably dropped into a meeting and asked yourself some version of the question, do I need to pay attention? What is needed from me here? Can I catch up on my inbox? Do I need to really be present in this meeting? So if we're thinking that, or if you are thinking that, think about someone higher up in the organization who has even more on their mind, more that they're thinking about. They just came from a really big, important conversation with another team that's still swirling around in their brain, and they drop into your meeting. They're not going to automatically be like, okay, I'm really ready. I'm really here. They're thinking, how much of myself and my brain am I going to give to this block of time? And today's episode is all about knowing how to get their attention within that block of time, how to get them to listen to you when you already have the meeting with them, when you're already in the room with them. And this is super important. And the reason that I'm calling this out is because when you get good at this and when you get good at grabbing their attention and really compelling them to listen to you, you enter into a virtuous cycle. When you're good at grabbing their attention in the room, they become more interested in you and your work. When they become more interested in you and your work, getting time on their calendar becomes easier. As getting time on their calendar becomes easier because they've become interested in you and your work, gaining their attention in the room gets easier and easier. It becomes a virtuous cycle. So as you learn to gain that initial attention from them through the way that you share your work with them and communicate updates with them, it earns you a very valuable form of trust that helps you get on their calendar more easily and helps you become the type of person that they automatically want to pay attention to and be present with when you invite them to a meeting. They don't necessarily think of everyone around them equally. There's going to be certain people within an organization where executives are excited to meet with them and looking forward to that meeting and ready to be present and pay attention. And then there's going to be other people in an organization where executives don't want to take the meetings with them, or they tell their assistant to postpone the meeting because it's not as important. And then when they do get to the meeting, they're not going to be as excited for it. They're not going to give it as much of their attention. And the reason I'm sharing all of this with you is, number one, to help you understand why the topic of today's episode is so important. But number two, because I want you to have an edge when it comes to getting promoted. And this is the exact type of subtle edge that can make the difference between breaking through to the next level of leadership in your organization versus not. And I know sometimes this question of, how do I get promoted? How do I break through to that next level? That question can feel murky and impossible because it really can come down to things as subtle and nuanced as this, as what I'm talking about, as the ability to command their attention so that you become the person they want on their calendar and so that you become the person that they have learned, I always want to pay attention to this person. So what I'm teaching you is how to gain that initial attention from them and become the type of person that they are compelled to listen to and whose work becomes really interesting to them. That's what I'm teaching you how to do. And hopefully through everything I've shared, you can see how critical that is for your path to leadership. Now, the good news is getting good at this is usually simpler than people think. And I've supported so many women in becoming stronger, more confident communicators. And so often I see people experience this struggle where they think, for me to get good at that, for me to know how to speak to leaders and know how to command their attention, I have to be fake, I have to be inauthentic, I have to be aggressive, I have to speak like some other version of myself, like someone I'm not, like I can't just show up as me. And what makes me so overjoyed to share with you is that nothing I'm teaching in today's episode and nothing I ever did in my corporate career and nothing I teach my clients and nothing I teach on the podcast will ever require you to show up inauthentically or to be domineering or to use weird corporate jargon that feels uncomfortable and unnatural to you. What is actually going to help you command the attention of an executive is simply to learn how to speak to them in their own language. The way that you can think about it is if you think about an org chart at a company, you have the leaders at the very top of the org chart, and then you have the people in the middle, and then you have the people towards the base of the org chart. I want you to think about it as you move up or down the org chart, people speak a different language. People express their ideas differently. So an executive at the top of an org chart will speak a different language than an intern who's all the way at the base of the org chart. All you're doing is learning how to speak that more elevated executive language. But that language has nothing to do with being domineering or using corporate jargon. And today I'm going to teach you a super powerful way to speak that executive language. It's a method that I have created. This is one of my signature tools that I've created. It's called the toll booth method. So I'm going to explain what the toll booth method is. And then I'm going to show you how to use it. And I'm going to share specific examples of what it looks like to adjust the way that you're communicating so that you're speaking the language of executives and making that really solid impression on them when you're communicating with them. So I want to lay some context to help you understand what the toll booth method is. I want you to imagine that communicating with someone and sharing information with someone is like driving down the street. When you're sharing information with, let's say, your team or people who report into you, it's as if you're driving down the street or driving down the highway. When you're sharing information with executives, it's as if you're driving through a toll booth. In other words, when you're just sharing information with your team, there's no toll booth. You're just driving down the street. You just get to go and drive, and you don't have to pay any toll. They're going to listen to what you're saying. They're going to let you drive down the street and share your ideas with them because they report to you. They have to listen to you. On the other hand, when you're sharing information with executives, it's as if you're going down a toll road. You can't just drive. You have to pass the toll booth and pay the toll. If you don't pay the toll, you don't get to drive down the road. Similarly, when you're speaking to an executive, they're not just going to listen to you. They're not just going to give you their attention. They're not just going to let you drive down their highway. They're only going to listen to you, and they're only going to pay attention if you first pay the toll. Now, the way that you pay the toll is through the way that you share information and through the specific language that you use. But the way that I want you to think about this is that my executives' focus and attention and interest in what I am sharing lies on the other side of this toll booth. So before I try to share with them anything about my project or any information or any update or any finding, I first have to pay the toll. If I don't pay the toll, they will not hear anything that I'm saying. Now, the cool thing about this, though, is that once you pay the toll, they will listen to you, and they will listen to you very closely. So what I'm going to teach you is how to pay the toll. The way that you pay the toll and the way that you implement my toll booth method is through using what I call results-focused language. Results-focused language is something that I really learned to do when I started my career and I was a consultant at McKinsey & Company. It's a big part of how I teach executive communication in my signature program, the Art of Speaking Up Academy. Results-focused language means we're not just talking about the idea or the findings or whatever the quote-unquote thing is that we are sharing with our executive audience. We are also continuously highlighting the positive business results that thing is creating within the organization. So the simplest possible way that I can explain to you the difference between regular language and results-focused language is by sharing the idea of an apple. If I say this is an apple, that is just regular, plain old language. If I say this is an apple, it offers a sweet and satisfying crunch, I have transitioned to results-focused language. The result of eating this apple is that I'm going to experience a sweet and satisfying crunch. Now, I have an interesting question for you. Which apple would you rather have? Would you rather have an apple, or would you rather have an apple with a sweet and satisfying crunch? It could literally be the same apple, but when it's presented to us using results-focused language, and someone says this apple has a sweet and satisfying crunch, it becomes more interesting and appealing to us. Because now we're not just thinking about the apple, which isn't necessarily super, super exciting. We're thinking about that crunch and how satisfying that crunch is going to be. And that crunch represents the positive result that apple brings to the person eating the apple. When we're speaking to executives, we have to be really, really careful not to talk too much about apples. So a pattern that's really easy to fall into is we get so in the weeds of the work that we're doing and we're so in the details of it that we'll go to an executive audience and we'll say, okay, I'm so excited to walk you through all the work we've been doing. Here are the green apples. Here are the pink lady apples. Here are the Macintosh apples. Here are some apple pears that we've been working on. And we're like so excited about all these apples. And we haven't at all talked about the crunch, the sweetness, all of the things that are going to make those apples more compelling to an executive audience. So I want you to think about it like this. Your audience, your executive audience cannot see the apple. They are blind to the apple unless you make them aware that it has a sweet and satisfying crunch. When you make them aware that it has a sweet and satisfying crunch, and when you use that results-focused language that really shows them what is the positive result that's going to come from this, you have officially paid the toll, and now they will listen to you, and now you can start talking about the apple. And I love the idea of a toll booth because it really emphasizes something so important here, which is that we have to use results-focused language with executives to capture their attention, just like we have to pay a toll before we can access the toll road. So whatever it is that you have to share with an executive audience or even with your boss, you want to think about it as, I can't share this with them until I pay the toll. Now, if at this point you're wondering, how do I pay the toll? Can you help me get a little bit better at this? That's exactly what we're going to do in the second half of this episode. We're going to take a super quick break. And then when I get back, I'm going to give you specific tools and language to help you learn how to pay the toll so that you can be super impressive and captivating to an executive audience when you speak. If you are loving this episode, I think you're also going to love my free video course, Speak Like a CEO. In this free course, I teach you 3 core skills that will make your communication more executive friendly so that you can make a really solid impression on your boss and the leaders at your company. You will find this free course inside my free resource library. The free resource library is a collection of all of my free ebooks, courses, trainings, and workbooks. To get access to Speak Like a CEO, plus all of my other free trainings, join the free resource library by clicking the link in the show notes or going to jessguzikcoaching.com/free resources. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Okay, so to quickly recap what we've covered, if we want executives to listen to us when we speak, we want to use results-focused language. Instead of just telling them, hey, my team created an apple, we want to tell them, hey, my team created an apple. It has a sweet and satisfying crunch. This is known as results-focused language. And when we use results-focused language, it's as if we're paying a toll on a toll booth and we can cross that toll. And now the executive is going to pay attention to what it is we are saying. So the best way for me to help you get good at this and help you really internalize this is to share some examples. And the best way for me to share examples with you is to have you imagine yourself as the CEO. You are going to get so much more out of this episode if you can take a minute to pause and really get yourself in the headspace of what would it be like for me to be the CEO of my company? What kind of thoughts would I be having as I walked into my next meeting? And I really want you to get into character and play pretend. And for the rest of this episode, I want you to imagine yourself as a CEO. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share fictional updates with you and fictional information with you. For each piece of information, I'm going to share it in 2 different ways. First, I'm going to share it without using results-focused language, aka without using the toll booth method and paying the quote-unquote toll. And then I'm going to share that same piece of information with you, but I am going to use results-focused language, and I'm going to make sure to pay the proverbial toll. And as you're listening, I want you to pay attention to how you feel, and I want you to notice which of these versions feels more compelling to you and which of these versions earns your attention most. Now, every time I proverbially pay the toll in these examples, we're going to play my special toll booth noise. Here it is. Isn't it the best? It's so satisfying. Now, I'm sharing this sound effect not just because it's super fun, but because it's really going to help you see the dynamic that is happening in a room when you use the toll booth method and when you use results-focused language. This sound effect is going to help you see and imagine the positive impact that this has on an executive audience. Okay, so you're the CEO. I'm presenting a fictional update or a fictional piece of information to you. For each one, I'm going to do it 2 different ways. Pay attention to which way earns your attention the most. Here we go. Here's an example of me not using the toll booth method. Today, I'll be walking you through our product plan for the new product launch. Here it is with the toll booth method. We are officially ready to begin getting our new product out into the world. Today, I'll be walking you through our product plan for the launch. Let's do another one. Here's an example with no toll being paid. Today, I'm going to walk you through our hiring plan for next quarter. Here it is with the toll being paid. We're ready to start staffing up so we can begin delivering on the new product roadmap. Today, I'll be walking you through the hiring plan for next quarter. Here's another example. No toll. Let me walk you through our latest execution plan. Here's that same update with the toll being paid. We've come up with an execution plan that shaves 3 weeks off our timeline so we can get this product out to market faster. Let me walk you through it. Here's another example. No toll. We found that nearly 50% of our customers are switching to a competitor after their first purchase of our product. Here's an example with the toll being paid. We've uncovered a finding that could help us close our revenue gap. We found that nearly 50% of our customers are switching to a competitor after their first purchase of our product. Here's another example, no toll being paid. Today, I'll be sharing the final revision of our legal agreement with our new supply chain partner. Now, here's the same update with the toll being paid. Great news, we're about to officially have our supply chain partnership locked in for next year. Today, I'll be sharing the final revision of the legal agreement. Okay, so in all of these, I hope that you can really sense and deeply feel the difference that happens when the toll is paid and the difference that happens for the audience when you use results-focused language. So this is the shift that I want you to make and that I want you to take away from this episode. I want you to imagine that no matter what you are sharing, I want you to imagine that everything you're sharing is an apple. It's some kind of apple. And you have to ask yourself, if what I'm sharing is an apple, what is the thing about it that is the crunch? What is the sweet and satisfying crunch about this apple? What is the sweet and satisfying crunch about this marketing plan? What is the sweet and satisfying crunch about this customer research? What is the sweet and satisfying crunch about this legal agreement I've been working on? It doesn't matter what it is. Everything that you're working on has a sweet and satisfying crunch for your company. That's why they're paying you. That's why they need your genius doing what you're doing. Now, sometimes it's really obvious to figure out what the sweet and satisfying crunch is. And sometimes you have to think a little bit more deeply and think about what is this piece of work or piece of information doing for the organization. But it is always doing something. And one of the skills that is going to make you really good as a leader is the skill of always being able to find that thing, always being able to identify the value, speak to the value, sell the value of what it is you're doing. I think a lot of times we want our work to speak for itself. We want to just present the work and let our audience think about why it's sweet and crunchy, and let our audience think it's amazing and tell us it's amazing. I understand that impulse because I'm someone who also started my career super shy, and it was really uncomfortable for me to sell the benefits of my work, to speak about my work in a way that highlighted how good it was. And I started to realize that the people who were willing to do that and the people that were willing to go to an executive audience and tell those executives why their work is good, as opposed to coming in humbly and hoping that the executives would tell them that their work is good, the people that were just willing to own it and say it first were the people who were garnering more respect and getting ahead in the organization faster. And put yourself back in the CEO seat for a minute. Who do you want on your C-suite? Who do you want leading and running your company? Do you want people leading and running your company who are just going to share something with you and they want you to tell them if it's good or not? Or do you want people leading and running your company who know what they're doing is good and aren't afraid to stand behind it? You obviously want people who aren't afraid to stand behind their work. So when you do this, it's not just that you're bragging, it's that you're communicating to your executive audience, I have the maturity of experience and I have the depth of thought leadership to feel really confident and to stand behind the work I do. That makes them trust you more. When they feel that, they know, oh, she's got it. I don't have to micromanage this. I can really let her run with this and lead. And it's that deeper trust that helps them feel really comfortable and confident to promote you to run bigger things and to be in bigger roles. So you're not just doing it to take up space, although that's a beautiful thing that we're doing it. You're doing it to demonstrate your competence and to demonstrate your level of comfort in what you do and in your area of expertise. And this is extremely helpful to your executive audience because it lets them know that you can lead at a higher level, and then they can calibrate their focus to other things. They can let you truly own it and lead it, and they will just plug in as like a sponsor or a supporter rather than them feeling like, well, she's presenting this, but I'm not getting a feeling that she feels super solid. So I feel like I really have to keep an eye on this to make sure it goes in the right direction. The other thing that's really important here is that when we pay the toll and when we use results-focused language and we show our executives what our work is doing for the organization, it helps them better understand the pathway to success. So we're not just doing it for us, we're also doing it for them. When I gave you all of those examples of not paying the toll versus paying the toll, and you imagined yourself as the CEO, you probably noticed that not only is it more compelling when I pay the toll, but also it puts the information into context. It actually makes the information easier for you to take in and understand. So when you use results-focused language, when you pay that toll, it's not just for you, and it's not just so you stand out and you look good in the room, but it's also for your audience. They're going to have a much easier experience taking in what you're sharing if you pay the toll and highlight the benefits of what you're sharing before you actually share the information. So you want to make sure that you mention that the apple is sweet and satisfying and crunchy before you go too deep in talking about the apple. Now, the last thing that I want to share here is I want to answer the question of when and how often do you pay the toll? Because when you're sharing information, you're giving a presentation, you're running a meeting, you might be talking for 30 to 60 minutes. And you might be wondering how this paying the toll fits into that. So I'll share some guidance there that I think will be really helpful for you. There's two places that you pay the toll when you're speaking to executives. The first place where you pay the toll, and this is something that I teach in depth in the Art of Speaking Up Academy, but the first place where you pay the toll, and by far the most important place to pay the toll and use that results-focused language, is at the very beginning of your meeting or update. During those first 30 seconds, your executive audience is deciding, consciously or unconsciously, how important is this? How much of my attention is this person going to get? And you want to make sure to communicate to them right away that what you are about to share is highly compelling and important and worth paying attention to. So whenever you're addressing a room full of leaders or executives or one leader or one executive, doesn't matter how many, but whenever you have leaders in your audience, the first couple of sentences that you share should include some version of linking the work that you're doing to this bigger benefit to the organization. And like I mentioned, if you want to practice this in more depth, I teach this and I guide you through this in detail inside the Art of Speaking Up Academy. And there's another place that you want to pay the toll, not just at the beginning of the meeting, but anytime you are bringing in new information. Anytime you are bringing in new information, you want to ask yourself if there's a way to pay the toll. So here's how I think about this. Let's say you have a slide presentation and you're going to be sharing it with a room full of executives and you're thinking to yourself, how often do I pay the toll throughout this slide presentation? To help you answer that question, you can look through each slide and ask yourself, is this slide bringing in a new piece of information? Or is this slide building on something that came before it? Anytime we're bringing in something new, we want to make sure to pay the toll. The reason for this is that new information is mentally taxing for our audience. Whenever we put something in front of them, And this happens with us too, right? Like when we put information in front of them, their brain goes, more stuff for me to look at, more things that I have to pay attention to and understand. So anytime our audience has that experience, if we pay the toll and if we say, hey, this is sweet and crunchy, do you want me to tell you about this apple? That's going to get their brain to a yes faster. So anytime you're introducing something new, you want to imagine that their attention and their willingness to listen to you lies on the other side of a toll booth. And if you can figure out a way to pay the toll, then they are going to be open to listening to what it is you are sharing. So a good rule of thumb to take away from this episode is focus on paying the toll whenever you're kicking off a meeting or a conversation, and focus on paying the toll whenever you're introducing new information that you're going to be asking your audience to pay attention to and process. When you do that, you will notice a difference in terms of how your audience engages and responds to you. You will get higher quality interaction. You will garner more respect. And the beautiful thing, paying the toll does not require you to be inauthentic. It just requires you to figure out how to share your update in the language of an executive leader. And as you get good at this, you will feel so powerful. The dynamic in your meetings and conversations is going to completely shift, and you're going to truly start to feel like the leader in the room. And in my opinion, there are few better feelings than truly creating that dynamic where people are listening to you and looking up to you, even though they sit above you in the organization. In my opinion, that is a really cool and fun and super empowering experience. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you loved this episode, if you found it useful, share it with someone who you think would benefit from learning about the toll booth method and from discovering the Art of Speaking Up podcast. And if you want to work with me more closely to learn how to elevate your communication to an executive level, and also to build the inner confidence to back it up, I want to invite you to join me in the Art of Speaking Up Academy, where I support you in growing your confidence and learning to elevate your communication so that you are truly seen as a leader. Throughout the year, I open up cohorts for the Art of Speaking Up Academy because it's a cohort-based program. It's a small group program. So I strongly recommend adding yourself to the waitlist so that you get the most up-to-date information on when the next cohort will be opening for enrollment. You can join the waitlist by clicking the link in the show notes or by going to jessguzikcoaching.com/academy. Thank you so much for being here, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye.